The next Hokage!
You see what I'm saying?
Not even a little.
With comics going through a resurgence right now, I thought it would be interesting to look at what anime IP have taken the plunge into American comics. Now, anime and comics have actually crossed paths quite a bit, but usually it's comic book characters that get anime adaptations like Batman Ninja or the Wolverine anime, or even on the manga side of things with books like Spider-Man or the Justice League. But it's actually incredibly infrequent that we see American comic book writers get to take a crack at iconic anime characters in the same way. Obviously, that's because there isn't much difference between this and this. But even though the form factor is similar, I would argue that they actually feel pretty distinctly different. Both of these mediums, while definitely having a heavy amount of influence on each other, are more influenced by their own rich histories, respectively. Which is why this is so interesting. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Cowboy Bebop by Dan Watters and Lamar Marthrin. This is a 4-part miniseries published by Titan Comics, and it's a tie-in comic with the Netflix Cowboy Bebop. Obviously, the Netflix version of Cowboy Bebop isn't as beloved as the original anime, but I tried to go into this comic book with an open mind. The 2022 book acts as a prequel to the Netflix series and features Spike, Jet, and Faye as they look for a quantum vest that has the power to change probability. Something that stood out to me was these stories didn't rely on the materials of either show. The book had its own new, interesting ideas, like a planet that's atmosphere makes everybody drunk. The characters didn't really align with my view of the characters from the original anime or the Netflix adaptation, but I thought they were serviceable enough. I think where this book really shines is Lamar Marthin's art. The whole book feels like a love letter to the stylization of the intro for the anime. It even starts with a reference to Tank, which I think does a good job of defining the tone for the rest of the books. We've seen comic book adaptations of live-action properties go a lot of different ways, so I think the choice to make these a bit more stylized while still respecting these versions of the characters was a good one. As a tie-in comic for a live-action version of an anime that already has spin-off books, this is actually pretty interesting. I wouldn't say that this is my favorite comic I've ever read, but just the fact that they let them make it is pretty awesome. I'm definitely never going to shit on a show trying to promote itself by using physical media, especially if it's another form of art. Next is Automatic Behavior by Max Gladstone and David Lopez, published by Kodansha Comics. I actually got the graphic novel with all 4 short stories in it, but I decided to focus on just the first one for the sake of this video. The story follows Major Makoto Kusanagi and Chief Aramaki on an undercover assignment in Shanghai. I think there's actually a pretty big problem you run into when trying to adapt anime into comics. These worlds and characters are fleshed out in a very specific way. American comics have recognizable characters, but their lore isn't as important as the mythos for any specific character. Like, it would be pretty difficult to write a comic about Eren Yeager because we understand the full scope of what his story looked like. This is where I think Ghost in the Shell actually makes a pretty good decision. It puts us inside that world, but it doesn't hold itself to what happened in the movie at all. And it felt like it held its own as just a comic, which is kind of what I was looking for in all of these. The pacing and paneling in this book are both really good. I would honestly recommend this regardless of if you're already a fan of Ghost in the Shell.
Coming up next is Naruto on Cartoon Network.
The next book I'm going to talk about is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Naruto collab by Caleb Gollner and Hendry Persetta. This is another 4-issue miniseries, and this one follows Team 7 pre-time skip running into, fighting, and allying with the Ninja Turtles to take down Shredder. I was impressed by how well they nailed the mixing of these two worlds. Not only were the environments and designs cohesive to both worlds, the characters and character interactions were incredibly believable. Usually when IPs mix, it's a lot of fun, but there's usually an obvious barrier that can't be broken, especially with 2 IPs as iconic as TMNT and Naruto. I really didn't feel like that at all, and even though these books did rely on tropes from both Naruto and Ninja Turtles, I never really felt like it got in the way of the story. Also, side note, Big Apple Village is a hilarious way to write the Ninja Turtles into the world of Naruto. My biggest problem with this book is it covers as much ground as you would expect a crossover to cover. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but after seeing these character interactions, I would have loved to see a more expansive story. But obviously that wasn't the point. The point was to have a fun crossover between 2 beloved IPs, and for that, they absolutely nailed it.
Hey, Speed, you better stop stringing Trixie along, or one day she'll be cheering for Peter Perfect at the wacky races. Hey, don't say I didn't warn you.
Lastly, I read the first issue of the 2025 Speed Racer line by David Pepose and David Tinto, published by Mad Cave. This book follows Speed Racer as he's trying to break into the underground circuit, both because his family's in debt and because he only feels like himself behind the wheel. He's dealing with memories of his brother that also used to be a racer and disapproval from his father who's scared that Speed might end up like his brother did. I honestly had really low expectations for this book. I mean, I'm familiar with Speed Racer, but I haven't watched a ton of it. But this book did a really good job of holding my interest. It was my favorite of all of the things that I read. It was definitely the most like an American comic. I feel like the team got a lot of freedom to do this story the way that they wanted to, in the same way that someone doing Batman would. I think the reason this works is because of how old the original series is. It gives the freedom to reboot it while also modernizing the story to be more compelling. It's like the difference between the original Gundam and Gundam Origin. I genuinely think I'm just gonna finish this line of comics. It blew my expectations out of the water. The writing and the art were both great, and it might genuinely just make me a Speed Racer fan. I really liked going through all of these books. They all had a very different approach to how they adapted for a Western audience. I doubt we'll see a significant influx of American comics covering Japanese IP, but it's still really interesting to me that these just get to exist. Also, if you're a fan of comics, I have my own comic that I wrote called Triumph. It's available on Google Play if you want to check it out. And if you do, feel free to come back and tell me what you thought. Thanks for watching.